a screen legend, filmmaker, environmentalist, and tireless champion of independent voices in cinema, has died.
Revered for his magnetic presence on screen in classics like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, and All the President's Men, Redford's legacy is as much about art as it is about integrity.
Studio did not want me because I was not well known like he was. He was a pretty well-known guy. And I just done a couple of films, and so therefore it sat with the director George Roy Hill, the writer William Goldman, and Paul eventually, who I did not know and not met. And it sat with them to approve me to be able to be in the film, to go against the studio who tried to keep me out because they felt it was too imbalanced. He was well known and I wasn't.
It was a huge loss to our community. Not only was he an incredible actor, he was one of the first guys to do political thrillers. We lost a legend today.
The news broke like a thunderclap across Hollywood. A man who defined an era, whose name became synonymous with beauty, talent, and vision, was suddenly gone. Robert Redford, one of the last true movie stars, had passed away at 89. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. From Hollywood legends who once shared the screen with him, to political figures, to younger artists who owed their careers to his belief in independent voices, the tributes flooded in. But among all the tears, all the heartfelt words, there was one voice that stood out: Barbara Streisand. For decades, their connection fascinated fans, critics, and even fellow actors. To her, he wasn't just a co-star. He was a lifelong friend, a man whose impact went far beyond his golden hair and perfect smile.
What are you going to do to Sonny?
Oh, I'm gonna get moving on.
You meet him and you're just overwhelmed by just how real and really charming he really is.
I heard Redford is doing a film about two brothers in Montana, and that was enough for me. I knew I would respect his vision on it because of his track record.
And as the world mourns Redford's passing, her tributes reveal the truth about who he really was. But before we get there, let's look at how the shock of this news hit everyone, and why Robert Redford's death feels like the end of an era. It began early in the morning, phone calls racing across time zones, messages lighting up screens, and by dawn, the tributes had already started pouring in. Hollywood greats who rarely spoke publicly were suddenly weeping on live TV. Politicians from both sides of the aisle, in an age where agreement feels impossible, paused to honor him.
He was barely in his sleep at his home. Well, that's a good way to go, I guess. But I'll tell you, Robert Redford was great. He had a series of years that there was nobody better. This just happened, I guess, huh? Wow. He died in his home, Utah, in his sleep. Yeah. Man, what movie would you say you liked the best in? Well, you have a lot of them. Honestly, I'd say he made 7 or 8 great movies. They were really great. There was a period of time when he was the hottest. I thought he was great.
Even President Donald Trump, known for his blunt remarks, reflected on Redford's unparalleled streak of roles, saying there was nobody better. That's the kind of respect Redford commanded. He was more than a celebrity. He was a cultural touchstone. His passing, announced from his beloved Sundance home in Utah, immediately sent shockwaves far beyond the entertainment industry. But as emotional as those reactions were, they were just the beginning. Because the tributes that really stopped people in their tracks came from one woman. The woman whose career intertwined with his in ways that still resonate 50 years later. Barbara Streisand. And their story is where this loss becomes truly heartbreaking. For millions, Robert Redford will always be remembered through the lens of The Way We Were.
It was 2 things. One, it was about friendship, and it had a deeper root because it was, first of all, it was a comedy, but it wasn't just a comedy alone. It was a comedy with pathos, and the pathos had to do with the word friendship. 2 guys who had
Released in 1973, it was more than a movie. It was an emotional landmark. The chemistry between Redford and Streisand felt so real, so raw, that people believed it had to be more than acting. Decades later, Streisand admitted their bond went far deeper than the screen. She once described him as shy, sensitive, and just as fascinated by the mysteries of relationships as she was. That quiet similarity beneath their surface differences made their on-screen love story unforgettable. And over the years, her tributes to him were unlike anything else in Hollywood. On his 85th birthday, she didn't just post a picture. She wrote, "Dear Bob, happy birthday. It was great talking to you the other day." Think about that. 5 decades after filming, they were still checking on each other like old friends. But what most people don't realize is that the movie which cemented their connection almost didn't happen because Robert Redford nearly walked away from it. Barbara Streisand knew exactly what she wanted, and what she wanted was Robert Redford. From the very beginning, when The Way We Were was just a script floating around Hollywood, she had only one name in mind for Hubbell Gardner. To Streisand, Redford wasn't just another leading man. He was the only one who could give the role the depth it needed. But the problem was, Redford wanted nothing to do with it. Behind the polished image of the Hollywood golden boy, Redford was already growing tired of the roles people tried to hand him. Studio executives saw him as the perfect all-American man, handsome, charming, the guy every woman wanted and every man wanted to be. But Redford hated that box. He once said he didn't want to play cardboard characters. And that's exactly how he saw Hubbell in the early drafts of the film. He flipped through the script and told the director flat out, "There's nothing here." To him, Hubbell was too perfect. A golden-haired poster boy with no flaws, no struggles, no real humanity. And Redford wasn't interested in just being wallpaper for Streisand's performance. That's when the tension started. The studio begged him to reconsider. They wanted the box office power of Streisand's name and Redford's face on the same poster. But Redford dug in his heels. If you had given him a flaw, he told director Sidney Pollack, that might be interesting. This was classic Redford, demanding more when everyone else would have taken the paycheck. Streisand, on the other hand, wasn't giving up so easily. She knew if the role went to anyone else, the movie would lose its magic. In her mind, there was no way we were without him. So she fought. Streisand lobbied hard behind the scenes, pushing Pollack to keep chasing Redford. Pollack himself admitted that he had to sit down with Redford and promise to reshape Hubbell into something more than just a pretty boy love interest. And slowly, Redford began to warm to the idea. What if Hubbell wasn't perfect? What if his good looks and easy charm were actually his weakness? The thing that kept him from ever being truly understood. That, Redford realized, was a story worth telling. Even then, he set conditions. He wanted rewrites. He wanted nuance. He wanted Hubbell to feel real. And with Streisand backing him, Pollack agreed. The script was reworked. Hubbell became flawed, conflicted, even tragic. And finally, Redford said yes. The result? Lightning in a bottle. From the moment cameras started rolling, it was clear that this was more than just another love story. The chemistry between Redford and Streisand was explosive, the kind you can't fake. Streisand later admitted she fell a little in love with him on set, and audiences felt it too. The film went on to earn 3 Academy Awards, cementing its place in cinematic history. To this day, people still talk about that final scene. Streisand's Katie brushing Redford's Hubbell's hair back from his forehead, whispering, "Your girl is lovely, Hubbell." But here's the twist. None of it would have happened if Redford had gotten his way at the start. If he had turned it down, if Streisand hadn't fought for him, if Pollack hadn't bent to his demands, The Way We Were would have been a very different movie. Maybe even a forgotten one. Instead, it became the defining film of Streisand's career. The performance that showed Redford was more than just a pretty face, and one of the most unforgettable love stories in cinema. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It wasn't just about casting a role. It was about 2 icons pushing against Hollywood's expectations and creating something timeless. Redford's refusal to play shallow characters, Streisand's determination to match herself with the best. Pollock's willingness to listen, it all collided into one perfect storm. And the irony is, the very thing Redford resisted, being cast as the golden boy, is what gave him the chance to prove he was so much more. Robert Redford wasn't just another handsome face in the crowd of 1970s Hollywood. He was the face. The tousled blonde hair, the granite jawline, the million-dollar smile. It all seemed too perfect. But Redford refused to coast on looks. He took on roles that forced audiences to see past the surface. The charming outlaw in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The crusading journalist in All the President's Men. The haunted husband in Ordinary People, which also earned him an Oscar as a director. Over a single decade, he starred in 16 feature films, each more ambitious than the last. And look at the women who shared the screen with him. Faye Dunaway, Jane Fonda, Mia Farrow, and of course, Barbara Streisand. These weren't just pretty faces. They were powerhouses. Redford didn't need weaker co-stars to shine. He elevated the best of the best. But the deeper truth is this. Redford's greatest impact wasn't in front of the camera. It was in what he built behind the scenes for the future of film itself. In 1981, fresh off his Oscar win, Redford founded something that would change cinema forever: the Sundance Institute, and later, the Sundance Film Festival. His vision was simple but revolutionary: give independent filmmakers a stage when Hollywood ignored them. The names that came out of Sundance read like a who's who of modern cinema: Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Paul Thomas Anderson, Darren Aronofsky. None of them would have had the same careers without Redford. And he wasn't just a figurehead. He believed in what the word independence meant. He said, "I saw other stories out there that weren't being told. Maybe I could give those people a chance." That willingness to step aside, to use his fame to lift others up, is what set him apart from so many of his contemporaries. And even as Sundance grew into an international powerhouse, Redford stayed true to that vision. But as the years went on, his life wasn't just about professional triumphs. There were heartbreaking personal losses too, moments that revealed the depth of his resilience. Even in his 80s, Redford refused to slow down. He reunited with Jane Fonda for Our Souls at Night in 2017 and delivered a final charming performance in The Old Man and the Gun. When asked about retirement, he simply said, "There's this life to lead. Why not live it as much as you can, as long as you can?" That philosophy guided him even as he faced personal tragedy. In 2020, his son James, a filmmaker and activist like his father, died of cancer at just 58. Years earlier, Redford had also lost his infant son Scott. No parent should have to endure such heartbreak. And yet, Redford kept going, creating, supporting, and inspiring. His strength wasn't about ignoring pain. It was about turning it into purpose. That ability to endure while still giving so much to others is why his death feels so heavy now. And as Hollywood prepares to honor him with a memorial that will rival anything we've ever seen, the world is bracing for a farewell unlike any other. The memorial for Robert Redford is expected to be the most star-studded goodbye Hollywood has seen in decades. Imagine it, every actor he ever inspired, every director he ever launched, every activist who admired his environmental work, all in one place to honor him. Already, the tributes are staggering. Meryl Streep called him one of the lions. Marlee Matlin thanked him for Sundance, crediting him with launching the film that defined her career. Even Stephen King wrote about the loss, saying Redford was part of a new and exciting Hollywood. And perhaps the most emotional tributes came from Rosie O'Donnell and Kenneth Cole, who both linked Redford's memory back to The Way We Were, because even half a century later, that film and that partnership with Streisand are still what define him for so many. Which raises the real question: Beyond the applause, beyond the tears, what does Robert Redford's legacy truly mean? Robert Redford's life was never uncomplicated. He was an actor, a director, an activist, a father, a friend. He faced personal loss, navigated Hollywood's shallow expectations, and built something that outlasted him. What Barbara Streisand revealed in her tributes over the years is the truth behind the legend. He wasn't just the golden boy with the $1 million smile. He was sensitive, thoughtful, playful, demanding of depth and honesty in a business that often lacked both. He believed in the power of stories to change people, and he proved it through Sundance, through his films, through the countless careers he supported. Streisand once said about their work together, "We made something that will last much longer than many real marriages." And she was right. 50 years later, audiences still cry, watching Katie push Hubbell's hair away in that final scene. That's not just a movie, that's legacy. Redford showed us that beauty with purpose can change the world, that stardom with vision can outlast time. He was never uncomplicated, but he was always lovely. Rest in peace, Robert Redford.